All right, so you put the symposium on recently called Power and Politics. Were these the kinds of things that you got into? I was supposed to speak at it, and I respectfully declined because I'm doing some other things. But I would like to hear how it went, and I know that Victor Davis Hanson was one of the keynotes, and I know that you put a lot of time and effort into it, and I believe anyway that the questions that you were asking leading up to it were important ones. So I'm wondering what your perspective is after having hosted the symposium, and maybe some insights that you learned that you didn't expect.
Well, first I should correct you that we didn't have Victor Davis Hanson this time because he had a scheduling conflict. But I think for the next one, we will make sure that because I organized the whole thing, Go to Woe, within 2 months. So, I did have a few actual regulars that had been on my podcast or people that I had very good connections with just say, I'm sorry, that timing doesn't work out for me. So, fair enough. Next 2021. Yeah, exactly. But I did still get some absolutely amazing philosophers, specifically too, of the Stoicism world. The man actually often credited with spearheading modern Stoicism is Professor A. Long of Berkeley. He was there along with Massimo Pigliucci, he's another superstar in the Stoic world, and Donald Robertson. And we had a great panel together, the four of us, on Sunday. And the panel discussions, I think, were really the most useful. The first day, the question was, how has the concept of power changed in history? And I had three presenters, one of which is more of a specialist in mythology. She had written a book about tracking classical monsters, Liz Gloyn, and the other two, James S. Rom and Neville Morley, are these. They were going to talk more about Thucydides, and so my moderator Ben said, "Okay, I'm going to ask the mythology expert first, because I suspect then we're going to go into Thucydides more, and then we won't touch on mythology." And what I was really shocked to hear was, in fact, the sort of intersectional result of the mythology and the more historians. And they ended up talking about the power of mythology that is used around political leaders, and that they use these myths to really substantiate their positions and to give them that legend and lore. But these are often myths or completely constructed. And so, for instance, they brought up, and this is still happening now, and that's something that, with the veil takes away, you're like, interesting. Like, that's an interesting perspective. So they talked about like George Washington and the cherry tree, or another one with George Washington is that he very carefully constructed his image based on the Roman general Cincinnatus. So, the founding fathers were all heavily influenced by the classics. And so it's interesting to see that George Washington literally modeled his whole image on a character, a historical person from the Roman era. So you learn a lot about the truth of these people when you see what they were doing.
Yeah, do you see those kinds of those myths being carried forward today? Because we still don't, as of this moment, we still don't have a president, but they're arguing and they're suing each other and all that kind of stuff that I don't really follow. But do you see that kind of mythology being played out today?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hesitant to vocalize my personal views of which of the myths are being perpetuated. What's that?
I think you should feel free to vocalize anything you want to.
Well, I mean, like, It's always interesting to me when I talk to people either on the right or the left, because they have myths about the other side and also complete falsehoods on either side, you know? So, like, people on the left will be like, oh, Trump is a Russian spy and all this connection with Russia, even though it's been disproved. And, you know, they'll still go on and on and on and on and on about it, you know. And then, like, on the right, they'll be like, oh, you know, was Obama really American? Or, you know, each one will have these sort of falsehoods, that this story and this idea that people will follow along with, and they won't even really question it. And so it's just interesting to see that myths have just been used to either promote or demote somebody, to make them. I mean, I guess maybe we just don't call them myths in the same way, because
Well,
myths
because
belong to history.
time has passed, right? So we can't call them myths because
We still believe in them.
yeah, we're living them. Um, but there is a lot of that going on, and it's gonna mean something. And so when I read like the book behind you, I keep pointing at it because I like that book. But like this stuff's been going on generation after generation after generation after generation, and there are different political systems that get put into place, and there's wars and all that kind of stuff, and you can read about all of it. It strikes me as well, I guess I get frustrated because I feel like people should recognize that those myths that are being portrayed are so thin and so like calculated that it doesn't make sense that people believe it. But I do believe that's been going on for thousands of years. I mean, we write about this stuff. We know in history that these wars go on and the political battles go on and stuff. And I don't know why people still believe in the system.
Yeah.
A really cynical thing. My wife thinks I'm like the most cynical person on the planet, but that's what I feel like. Like, just open a fucking book.
Yeah, cynicism's useful. I mean, it's a very good tool. Yeah, I mean, I struggle to fully understand sometimes the reasons people believe things. I think a lot of times people want to believe them, and it's painful for them to come to the acknowledgement that something isn't true, because then it would make their previous actions unjustified. So, for instance, you know, there's an interesting study about doomsday cults. You know, after a doomsday cult doesn't end in doomsday, you would think they would go look at each other, you know, midnight hits, and they go, all right, let's go home. That was a failure. Like, let's not talk about that one anymore. But that doesn't happen. In fact, they double down and they try to convert people. And sometimes the stupider the idea, the more people try to convert others so that it justifies them in believing it. Like, they almost convert others in order to convert themselves again and again on the idea. So, you know, it's always the newest converts to a religion or the newest converts to a nation that are like believe the most fervently. And they can't handle the cognitive dissonance. And I'll just say, like, an example that makes it sort of more something we can see right now. We talk about lockdowns and the validity of lockdowns. And, you know, the World Health Organization came out and said, you know, lockdowns weren't actually that useful or helpful. And yet people still go back into lockdowns. Also, the World Health Organization says a lot of things. So, you know, there's that too. But speaking as somebody who's just come out of a long lockdown and it got better when the lockdown ended, you know, that I'm just saying that there are different opinions on it. And I talk to people like in Australia where they have a really a really intense lockdown. And they can't handle talking about maybe a lockdown isn't worthwhile, because people have made the sacrifice of being in a lockdown. Like, they've made personal sacrifices. So if somebody says a lockdown's not useful, then they're like, well, what was I doing for the last 6 months?
Yeah.
So they have every incentive to continue the myth or the mythology or the idea of whatever they've been doing, because it justifies what they've been doing.
Which is difficult. it's difficult because then you get you get kind of a curse of knowledge going, right? Where they think they know what's going on. I'll just give you an example. I was at, I played tennis on Tuesdays and Fridays. And I've been going to the same place since we opened back up in April. So they were kind of ahead of the curve opening back up. And on, let's see, what's today? So on Monday, the governor of Maryland came out and said, everyone has to wear a mask in Maryland, even if you're outside, right? And I didn't get the message. Like, I was like, what? I didn't know. And so like 5 people, I was going into tennis and out of tennis. I'm not near anyone. I'm not sick. I have a family. I have 5 kids. I mean, 5 people in my family.
I was about to say 5 kids. When did that happen?
No. There's 5 people that are in my house, and like, we're fine. So why are people getting mad at me? Someone actually said they would spank me if I didn't wear a mask. And I'm like, well, that's interesting.
Yeah. Can I take you up on that? Yeah.
But it's just weird how opinions will change that quickly. And I don't know. I'm probably just a mask hater, but mostly because when I put one on, my glasses fog up and I can't see. So I'd rather be able to see than not. Not a political thing for me. I'm just like, I don't wear this freaking thing.
If you clean your glasses with dishwasher soap beforehand, they won't fog.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, you do that like in scuba diving or snorkeling, for instance.
Oh, well, I don't do that, so.
Yeah, it's so just to kind of bring it back to the classics from time to time. That's sort of the value sometimes of the classical world, in that you learn how to look at things from a different perspective. And I think it's Aristotle who said it's the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain an idea without accepting it. And I think it's really valuable to both be able to fully and utterly suspend judgment like a skeptic, and try to steelman the other person's argument so you can try to understand it and really get to the truth of the matter, whether it's wearing masks or lockdowns, or if this political leader is a good option or not. And also to be able to change your mind, because I mean, I, for one, during this pandemic have changed my mind a lot of times. And I don't think that's a position of weakness. That's a position of, the more information you have, the better you can make a decision. And if you never changed your mind, then that meant you never learned anything. So at times we were really jumped onto the quarantine early here. We were very strict in the beginning. As things have loosened up, we've changed our status.
You mean the government was?
No, I was saying me personally and my husband and my daughter, we chose to self-quarantine before it even became a rule, because we work from home. We could. And when we didn't have that much information, we felt that was the most safest thing to do. When we got more information, we changed our mind and we acted differently. But with every stage, the more you know, the more you know.
Yeah. Well, I think that, I've always taken that approach to when I read the classics, you end up not knowing the context that people are making arguments. So you listen to both arguments, and then you're like, well, I agree with this one, or I agree with that one. And you're not weighted down by the politics of the time. And I think it's really important that people do that. But it takes a lot of work. You got to do a lot of reading, and you got to do a lot of talking, and it's hard, especially where social media has taken over the way it has, and the broadcast media is competing with social media. So like the level of information and actual analysis or depth is it's gone. It's very frustrating for me because I'm trying to like figure out what's going on. And I of course, I want to take care of my family. And I know that you guys are dealing with your own situation. What can people do? I actually want to encourage people to read the weekly email that you send out. So we'll put a call to action at the bottom of the video, but like maybe just encourage people what the value is, because sometimes when you read it, it feels like it's a little bit out of context because it's not directly tied to the media. But I know that you work hard to make sure that the ideas that you're presenting are consistent with conversations that you're having and that things you're observing in the world. It's not taken out of time. And I don't know, a lot of people think about philosophy as like, that's what people with trust funds do.
Yeah, I mean, well, okay, I should answer the question you actually asked a long time ago that I don't think I properly responded to, which is like our tactic. And I tried to do two things. One, the classics sort of cover philosophy, history, and mythology. And, sometimes the people who are into mythology aren't into philosophy.
Religion too, because that plays into the game.
Well, I would classify religion as both under mythology and philosophy.
Okay.
Or depending on what segment of it that you're talking about. For instance, Christianity and Stoicism are very interconnected. And Christianity was heavily influenced by Stoicism. And Christianity was also heavily influenced by Greek mythology. So, there's all these sort of things. But so I try to cover those kind of different topics, but also I sort of alternate between connecting it very much to real world events and current events, and trying to make things very topical and shows the sort of the value of ancient history. But also, it's can be tiresome just talking about the election from time to time. So I know we do try to also sort of throw in a bit of history escapism because sometimes it's just fun to, learn about people from an ancient time period and the cool stuff they were doing and, amazing inventions. And, that's sometimes it's just for entertainment as well as relevance.
Okay, so what would you suggest that people do? Sign up for the weekly email first?
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
you're hosting a symposia, I guess. And so if people just sign up, they'll get tuned in and then they can follow along. And
yeah, I mean, ancient history.
Also, I want to point out, this is just one of my own passions, that it was co-hosted by Bonner Private Wines, the last symposium you did. And I tried to get involved with Jules and with Will early on because I'm like, that's kind of my thing. And they started sending me wines and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, Bonner Private Wines.
They co-sponsored the whole thing, right?
Yeah, they did an excellent job of providing a Mediterranean wine collection. So the first day we had wine tasting with the Greek wines from Santorini and Nemea, and the second day the Italian wines from Sicily and Sardinia.
All on Zoom.
Yeah, so it was actually GoToWebinar was the program, but so we'd have a series of lectures, and then we did a wine tasting, and then afterwards the panel discussion. So it's kind of a way to, the best we could to recreate a symposium feel where you get, because I think it's important people remember, and you touched on this, that philosophy isn't about stuffy professors and boring things. And I think this is actually a bigger problem with modern philosophy. It's like I was saying before, it's sort of like a modern language, even like a different language that you have to sort of get your head around these terms. Ancient philosophy, it's mostly just about thinking about things and questioning them and liking to learn and study wisdom. And it's, I think, more of a lifestyle than a field of study. But that if you want to get interested in it and get involved and start kind of chipping away at that, it can seem like a mountain of information that's kind of hard to get into. Classical wisdom, we try to purposely make sure that the emails are like interesting, engaging, they're easy to read. It's not stuffy, boring academic stuff. that's exactly the opposite. If we're trying to show that it's like just really interesting stuff. And we have, the symposium where we're offering the videos if people want to watch that and sort of get into philosophy from a current events perspective. The other option I would say too is we also have a course called The Essential Greeks, and it's actually this book. And that I think offers a great framework because it kind of does Homer, it does the tragedians, it does the philosophers and the historians, and that will give you like a really solid framework. And it's 10 set lessons, and then from there everything else can fit into place. You know what I mean? It gives you like a nice framework. And Addison, if you haven't watched it, I think you will get a kick out of both
I actually haven't watched it, so I'm
the
gonna
presenter
in.
and some of the locations where it was shot. I think you will recognize as well.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Anya, I really appreciate talking to you. We do a lot of discussions that center around like stimulus spending and like we've done so much on the election that it drives me crazy. So it's kind of a breath of fresh air to talk about something that I'm really interested in.
Well, and can I just add very, very quickly to some of your listeners that I'm very fortunate to know a lot of the fans of classical wisdom, and I can kind of guarantee you that some of the people who are into the classics are some of the most successful businessmen and investors, and it actually gives you an edge that I don't think people appreciate, a way of handling stressful situations, making good decisions. I mean, it is the culmination of thousands of years of knowledge. It's really actually valuable and can even translate into a monetary benefits as well, just as a way to handle life.
Yeah, and like you say, it's also entertaining because you can kind of put your own perspective into the course of history. And I've said this for a long time because I studied it in school and stuff, but it like enriches your life in a way that money can't.
Definitely. Oh God, just like turn off your social media for a bit and pick up, the Odyssey. And this is another thing I just say, finally, it's a great place to start is definitely with the Iliad and the Odyssey. And the Odyssey is just so good that like I just reread it again recently, and it's just captivating. Like it's actually, you just sit down there and you will actually enjoy the whole book.
Yeah. All right, Anya, thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks for having me, Edison.
Yep.